Hey everyone. So today is the 8th of December, and in Austria that means it's a public holiday. Normally shops are closed. This year the point is kind of mute, but the 8th of December is one of those exceptions where shops can open anyway if they want to. Because of course it's December and shops really do want to open. The 8th of December is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. So it's one of those typically Catholic holidays that I think you probably also have in Spain and Italy, and if I remember correctly, in many parts of Central and South America. What is being celebrated is the conception of Mary, the Mother of God. And the idea in the Catholic Church is that Mary was conceived free from the original sin. This is a doctrine in the Catholic Church, meaning if you think otherwise or say otherwise, you're a heretic, and I guess you can't be Catholic. It's those things that personally, as someone who's interested in religion but not, deeply invested in it, I always find kind of amusing. I wouldn't have thought that it's such an important point, but apparently it is in the church. In Austria, we've had this holiday for a very long time, since the 17th century. Shops, on the other hand, are only allowed to open since 1995, so all things considered, a very short time. The Feast of the Immaculate Conception is also a solemnity, meaning it's a feast day of the highest order in the church. And that means that it normally replaces other festivities on a Sunday, except if they fall in the time of Advent, Lent, or Easter. Since we're during the time of Advent right now, it can happen that if you go to church on Monday, the 9th of December, that you might hear about the Immaculate Conception. Until today, I have to admit I didn't know what solemnities were, but there are of course quite a few. Others include the 1st of January, which is also a solemnity of Mary. However, since it's a public holiday anyway, I think most people who don't go to church aren't really aware of it. Then we have January the 6th, which is Epiphany, or with regards to Mary, August 15th, which is the Assumption of Mary, and also a public holiday in Austria. One interesting thing when it comes to these feast days and holidays is that they're of course partly very, very old, and usually date back to Roman times, even if some of them have been established later. And during Roman times, they fell in line with certain parts of the solar year. So we can know exactly when day and night are equally long, or when we have the longest day or the shortest day. Here we have in Latin the words for solstice and equinox. So this meaning day and night are equally long, and here in German we call it Sonnenwende, so the turning of the sun. Either it turns and the days become longer again, or it turns and they become shorter. Now, Christmas, for example, was placed exactly on the winter solstice. On the other hand, Easter was placed after the first full moon of the spring equinox. However, there's a little problem. The calendar that the Romans used doesn't quite match the solar year, which is why after 1.5 millennia in 1582, Pope Gregory XIII introduced an adopted calendar, the Gregorian calendar. And it's really a very, very small change. It went from 365.25 years in a day to 265.2425. Practically, that means that leap years that can be divided by 100 are not leap years. However, if they can be divided by 400, they are. So 1600 or 2000 were leap years, but 1700, 1800, 1900 were not. Now, there's one problem. That change was introduced by a pope. And as you can imagine, especially in the 16th century, the Pope was not welcome everywhere. So a lot of the Protestant areas did not accept that change. And for example, in Switzerland, or also in what is today Germany, for a couple hundred years, you had 2 different calendars, which seems pretty incredible. And of course, for example, in the Orthodox Church, this change was also accepted much later, which is why the October Revolution in some way happened in November. It also means that Epiphany, so what we celebrate on January the 6th, in some churches is celebrated on January the 19th, because you've had a 13-day shift by now between those 2 calendars. Another interesting part about Epiphany is that you can take off your Christmas decorations traditionally. Here in Austria, however, we sometimes keep them longer. My mom always said you can keep them up until Candlemas, which is on the 2nd of February. And that then is the official end of the Christmas season, which is pretty long, all things considered. Especially if maybe you live in an area where Christmas season starts a bit earlier than that. Here we have a calendar of November from Innsbruck in the Tyrol. This is called Michels Volkskalender. I don't quite know when this is from. I'm guessing sometime in the 20th century, although it's made to look quite old. And what we can see here is, for example, here on the 1st we have Allerheiligen, and on the 2nd Allerseelen. And here on the 11th we have Martin von Tours. So this is Martinstag. It's the official beginning of carnival season, but it's also, as it says here, Alter Advent, so the official beginning of the old season of Advent. So this would have lasted from the 11th of February all the way, interestingly, not to Christmas, but to Epiphany. And those would have been the 40 days of fasting without the weekends. If we look further down here on the 20th, we have Christkönigstag, which is another solemnity. Christ the King Sunday. This tells us that this calendar can't be too old, because this only became a holiday in 1925. Or a solemnity, I should say. It's not a public holiday here. It also says Katharinsonntag, but I couldn't find out what that means. The day after, on the 21st, we have Maria Opferung, which is the presentation of Mary at the temple. This one's been a Catholic feast since the 14th century. It was originally an Orthodox holiday. And finally, on the 30th, we have Winterquartember. So this comes after the first Sunday in Advent. Winterquartember, Andreasnacht. Now, Quartember tells us that this is, I think it's a fast day. And it could mean that the Pjachten turned up here. And in Andreasnacht, there are also some funny traditions around that. In Austria, it is said that this is a good night to meet your future husband or to bind him to you. For example, if you invite him to dinner. However, you can't put forks on the table. That's bad luck. I don't know what that means in terms of what you're going to cook. I guess today is less of an issue, but 100 years ago, I don't know if that was all that easy. Alright. So I think it's quite fascinating to see how old a lot of these festivities are, and the problems that arose from that in terms of the shift in calendar, which is not something you would expect when you plan something like a winter holiday. I think for today, that's quite a lot of information, and I'm gonna close up this book now. And I hope I'll see you again tomorrow. So, good night for now.